Welcome to Conflict to Connection, the podcast that helps families navigate separation with compassion and understanding. I'm Mitch, a child consultant at Civilized Separations, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Bill and Bella. Together, we tackle tough conversations about divorce, co-parenting, and creating healthier family dynamics. Whether you're navigating a separation or just looking for better ways to connect, this podcast is here to guide you every step of the way. So today we're exploring the topic of we are divorced, now what? As always, I'm joined by Bill, a post-separation family repair specialist and founder of Civilized Separations with decades of experience as a mediator, and Bella, lead child consultant at Civilized Separations with years of experience working in child inclusive mediation. Welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
We're talking about after divorce. What happens after that process, after we've been to court or we've had the mediation process. So let's imagine I am just divorced from my ex-partner and the court process is finished and, you know, you're kind of feeling that sense of relief, but also slightly scared about what's going to happen next. What does my life look like now that I'm separated? My family has been separated from each other. What would you say to someone who is kind of going into that next stage of their life?
I think probably to be easy on themselves as much as anything, not to have high expectations. I suppose, like if you've been in a relationship for a long time and it hasn't been great, you might have developed quite a kind of a fantasy almost about what life will be now that you're not. And I suppose there will be some kind of realities that will settle in. So I'd say don't have unachievably high expectations about what life's going to be like. But I also would say now is a great opportunity to start. And an unusual opportunity in a way. I suppose in some respects people don't have the opportunity to kind of review their lives or craft a life because they're in the midst of it all and it's all just sort of happening. So I think a lot of people would quite, in some ways, enjoy the opportunity to kind of say, okay, now I'm in a situation where I can kind of have the life I've been wanting to have for a long time. So what am I going to do? What sort of life am I going to have? I mean, I suppose, with children, it's important to bear in mind that they are also going through a lot. I think we can sometimes underappreciate how the new life that they get sort of slightly imposed upon them. Although a lot of children say, look, I think it's much better now that they have separated. But I think for all children, the sense of things changing is unsettling. So they can, I think, get pushed into a life that they didn't have a lot of say over. So I think it's probably important to bear in mind that they've got a perspective on it all and they're making meaning of it. It's so important to bear in mind that children internalize what's going on and work out how they should feel about themselves based on what's happening to them. So if they're being asked to do something they don't want to do, they inevitably think, maybe my opinions don't matter that much, therefore I don't matter that much. That's the sort of the risk, And then you set that sort of template of how you feel about yourself because you're a child and because you're working out how to feel about yourself. It gets set, and then that sense of maybe I don't really matter that much kind of stays with them, and then through their adult lives they come with this maybe I don't matter that much feeling. It's really important that while this shift is happening, the parents can be as much as possible aware of how the child might be interpreting it.
They're going to almost be sort of more alert than usual, obviously, because they've watched this process happen and the parents have gone through the separation, which kind of feels like a full steam ahead sort of experience, because you've got, you're going to court and you've got the lawyers and then all of a sudden it's done. And you might actually go through a stage of like shock, and you might and the guilt might sit in, or the grief might sit in after everything stops. And unfortunately, at that moment, the children are even more they're kind of watching you even closer than before because they're really wanting to see how you manage this and what it's going to be like, which is so tough for people. They need to sort of be kind of secure and really, strong for the children, but that time for them is really, it's very intense. And so I suppose needing to kind of, as you mentioned, sort of be patient with yourself as well. Just know that it's a journey. It's not a race. It's, be kind. Don't set the standards too high. Don't feel bad because you haven't, I don't know, moved on quicker, or, you haven't settled into this new house quickly, or be kind. It's you're sort of taking on a whole new identity now. You're not married anymore.
And for, obviously the children are kind of observing their parents at that point and kind of taking on a lot of, what is my new life going to be like? What is this going to be like when mum and dad are separated now? How do you, or what would you recommend to parents to try and make that transition as easy as possible for their kids? What would you recommend that they say? Because they're going to be feeling that feeling of grief and anxiety and feeling scared about, how do I make this new life for my kids and how do I be a good parent? They don't want to put that on their children, of course. So what would you recommend to them when they're feeling all of these really intense new feelings? But they want their children to know that actually it's going to be okay. But right now I'm feeling a little bit. Is that what you would say, to be upfront about that?
I think children are interested in watching how you kind of recover.
Okay.
So I think it's okay to be authentic to a point. You can show them vulnerability, but if you recover from those moments, if they can see you actually, putting the steps in place to make sure that there is a plan forward, it might feel a bit strange now. All the boxes are still packed and we haven't even started to set up the new house and that sort of thing. I suppose rather than kind of sitting and sort of staring at the boxes, start to unpack them, start to dare to dream that this could be something really positive.
I was just thinking that it's kind of unfortunate in a way that the most cataclysmic time in your life, the time when your life is kind of turned upside down as a parent, is the time when the children are most in need of you to be emanating this constant sense of it's okay, life is predictable and certain, and there's no need for you to kind of unravel. So it's awful, really, to have that degree of trauma and responsibility at the same time.
Yeah.
Really tough. So like saying being easy on yourself, but probably trying to be easy on the other parent as well. I mean, because, I think the natural response, I suppose, to something going wrong in your life is to look outward at what's happened. And no doubt the other person's provided you with plenty of evidence that the reason life hasn't worked out is down to them. It seems to be human nature for us to kind of look out to see reasons for why things haven't worked out rather than to look in. So that inclination to perhaps be annoyed with the other person because of your new circumstances diminishes their capacity to be a parent, because they feel a sense of, anger towards them, or that they're held responsible, or they're seen as the reason why things haven't worked out. That's a load to carry when you're caring and looking after children who are kind of watching you to see whether you're okay or not. So really alleviating the other parent as much as possible from any sense of bad feeling is a gift for the children, but also not good for the individual to spend a lot of time thinking angry thoughts about so-and-so's ruined my life and it's their fault, and the reason I missed the bus this morning was because of them.
I mean, I can imagine that it's constant feeling of guilt that all parents have about, and especially now that they feel like they've done something to ruin their children's lives, literally put them in this situation. So that feeling of impending guilt all the time, and then also the anger that you have or that you're receiving from the other person.
Yeah.
It's constant.
It kind of slows down the recovery process, really, if you're kind of holding on to those feelings of betrayal and guilt and shame, but also intense anger.
Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly does slow down your process of kind of starting to accommodate a new reality. If you
Yeah.
think about, you're very stuck and every day thinking about how bad someone else has been towards you, that
Yeah.
does slow down your recovery if you spend a lot of time nurturing a story of angry resentment.
I feel though it could be quite difficult to find that energy to want to be connected with your ex-partner in some way or be positive about them at that point, because you are kind of going through the trauma of what you've been through. You might have had a really awful core experience. And then to sum up the energy or be positive, I mean, it sounds good, but it would be quite difficult to do at that point.
Yeah, in reality, yeah, like the
Yeah,
last person
Yeah.
on earth.
exactly. Especially if you've been rehearsing that narrative during the entire process of using the courts and things, like, because you're constantly reminded, remember that this happened, remember that this happened. So you've been sort of rehearsing that narrative for a fair while, and then to kind of stop and, yeah, to then just go, okay, well, I'm gonna let that all go now, and I'm gonna start thinking about the incredible future. Of course, it's not that easy. Of course, it isn't. But it is important to be aware of that it's always going to be beneficial for you to turn that frustration into a benign, it doesn't need to be turned into something positive. It just needs to be something that doesn't play on your mind all the time. It just needs to sort of settle. It needs to not be there so much. The more you just kind of quiet that part, you will start to think better. There'll be more space in your brain for it.
And that will do so much for your children as well going forward. Just the positivity or the optimism of what the new life could be, the new way forward, the new family reshape.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is that your propensity to feel anger and struggle to let go and have a problem with starting to get encouraged about how life might be in the future, your propensity to do all of those things predates you meeting this person in reality. You did not, because of a relationship with this person, suddenly develop this angry perspective or this inability to move on. In reality, that propensity to be like that existed before this person came into your life. You don't suddenly develop an upset or an anger when you meet someone. The propensity was already there. That's a hard thing to remember because you think to yourself, well, everything that's gone wrong in my life, I can absolutely pin it on so-and-so. The day that person came into my life is when everything started to unravel. But you're being selective about how you're choosing to frame what's happened. And you're noticing, you're not allowing yourself to say, look, I've always had a propensity to sort of hold a grudge. I need to be honest with myself. I need to bear in mind that this is not the first person I've been annoyed with. Certainly, this is the first really big, intense relationship that has obviously had an enormous effect on me. But my capacity to be affected was there before this person came along.
Yeah, so they had pre-developed coping mechanisms almost before this incident, the divorce or whatever it may be. They had those kind of preconceived, the coping mechanisms from their childhood.
I suppose it's learning about that and becoming more aware of your own propensities and your own coping mechanisms that happened as a child make it actually much easier to be able to accept what has happened. I suppose I think it's important not to look at the relationship breakdown as a sort of failure. It doesn't need to be looked at that way because, of course, that's going to make you feel horrible about yourself. You didn't fail. It's okay. Relationships come to end. It's so common. Divorce is not unique.
Yeah, I suppose that's a societal thing as well, putting that guilt onto parents that you've broken something, you've done something wrong here, that this is not okay. When actually, 50% of families have experienced this. This is not uncommon. So when we get to that point where, we want to do best by our children, of course, and as you say, live the rest of our life with our co-parent, with our ex-partner. How do we get to that point where we feel like that's something that we can do after maybe a bad court process or a really difficult breakup? How do we get to the point where we feel like we can co-parent with someone that is our ex-partner?
I think it's worth thinking about the relationship that didn't work as a system that was flawed, rather than an indication that the people in the relationship were, there's something wrong with them. I think that can really help. You'd often find a situation where both people would have come with a sense of goodwill, wanting to go well and finding that it didn't, and therefore holding each other responsible. I think if you're going to have a relationship with someone that feels reassuring from the kid's point of view, because again, it's not something you can kind of fake, it's worth allowing yourself to look at this as a relationship that didn't work, and therefore looking at how the new version, the reshaped family, as you were saying, would look. How would that be? And again, it comes down to the sense of how appreciated or liked or valued you are. If you can make sure that when you see each other, you both experience a sense of being appreciated and seen as valuable and useful and included. Because it's a very simple requirement that all humans have. And it's interesting that when we get into problems in an intimate relationship, we forget that. We kind of think the more I tell you how awful you are, the more you'll realize and change. Of course, that's not the opposite is what happens. So I know it's kind of counterintuitive, but to find out how would things be going if we were finding each other's presence to be easy, what would be happening? And again, it's not difficult to find that out. People have very simple requirements. So I think it's a case of, while you're establishing the new parenting alliance, you need to find out what are the very specific things that you would appreciate or like to see if you were personally thinking, I feel okay about this. And establishing that as the kind of rules of the new relationship. So not really doing it because each person has articulated they'd like that. It's because it becomes a relationship requirement rather than a personal requirement. Because sometimes you might not be feeling like that much goodwill, or sometimes the other person might have done something that annoys you. So you think, I don't want to do this nice thing because even though you've told me that matters to you, and even though that means you'll be nice to me, I don't feel like doing it. But if it becomes a relationship rule, the requirements of the parenting alliance are that you do these things when you see each other, then you'll do them anyway, because we're human and we love to get a message of respect and regard. We'll always respond well to it. So over time, you'll start to look forward to seeing that person. You'll start to think, why wouldn't I? Or you'll be thinking about ringing them up because something's happened with the kids and you need to sort something out. You'll be thinking, of course I'll ring them. I expect when they answer the phone, they're going to say something that makes me feel good.
Right. So it's all about kind of creating a parenting alliance that moving forward creates like a good tone between the two.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like the establishment of that kind of new relationship going forward.
Yeah.
This is our new parenting alliance. It's going to be a good tone between each other. And in turn, we will be able to deal with so and so not doing well in school.
Tone's all we care about.
Yeah.
Ironically.
Yeah, exactly.
So if we get a good tone, we think, oh, this is going to be okay.
Mm.
And I think, if you've had a few good interactions, like let's suppose you've slightly prescriptively followed the guidelines and the person has said, I'd love it if you were to smile and say these words and look like this. So you do it because, okay, these are the guidelines. And you get a good response. Oh, that's all right. And you do it a few times, again, following the rules. After a while, when you pick up the phone, you're going to think this is probably going to be okay because the last 2 or 3 times were. So this probably will as well. So that sense of it probably will go well. It means it will.
It's creating that habit.
Yes.
Almost.
An expectation, an anticipation. I'm expecting this to go well. And because you expect it to, it does. So even really difficult topics that in the past you would have got really stuck over suddenly become really quite simple to deal with because the sense of goodwill, the sense of value, the sense of being appreciated is there. And that's all we need. It doesn't really matter what the topic is. It's how we feel when we cover it.
It doesn't need to be all the time because you are separated now. So you don't have to do these messages of goodwill constantly every day, every morning.
Exactly.
You know, you're having to do it once a week or so. So
Just
a-
much easier.
A co-parenting relationship is a low-maintenance relationship in many ways.
Exactly.
I mean, it does need to be quality maintenance, but you might only do it once a month,
yes.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
But that once a month, 5-minute interaction feels good. Therefore, the space that exists between the next one is a benign one.
Yeah, because I often hear about people saying that their co-parenting, you know, it's going to be such a struggle. This is going to be like take over my life, that I have to deal with this person constantly. But actually, you're right that, you know, if it's the small things every so often that make the big difference, because it will actually be okay. The rest of the time, you're kind of doing your own thing with the kids maybe, but you're doing your own thing. But say, for example, I would suppose that some situations there might not be that co-parenting alliance that they both feel like they need to be cooperative with each other. Say one doesn't have this feeling and the one does. Say they want, okay, I understand what you're saying, Bill. I need to be cooperative with my ex-partner because I want to do best by my children, but the other person's just not hearing that at all, and it's not looking like that's going to be a possibility. Is that will it still be able to work at that point?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can have sentiments that are positive towards that person, even if you're not getting rewarded
Okay.
or anything back. So really, they don't have to be worthy. You can sort of be kind to them anyway. Whether you get a reward for that or a response, well, it'd be nice if you did. But again, I think it's mentally healthy to start to feel positively towards other people. It's actually bad for you
Yeah, exactly.
to think thoughts about someone else that aren't good.
Yeah, you can almost say to yourself, I was kind. I didn't get the response that I would have loved, but at least I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not sort of feeding into that sort of like unhealthy relationship. The relationship that we left behind, I'm not engaging in that anymore. I've left that, you know, broken hunk of metal behind. I'm going to use something new. And that should be, you know, something that, you know, can provide people with enthusiasm. First of all, it is a positive thing that you're not going to need to feed this person messages of goodwill that often, which is a break. You're actually going to be you're going to be freed from that. And also the newer version of you that says to yourself, I'm not going to think like that anymore because I feel it being poisonous for me.
It's like a personal development.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you keep on being awful to that person, it's like you're just continuously swallowing poison.
Yeah.
But
so
if
you're doing it yourself, you're kind of, it's not necessarily for them. You're not
No. No, that's
necessarily
right.
being
Yeah, it's actually
positive
for you.
just because you want them to feel happy.
Yeah.
You're actually doing it because it's going to make you feel better and it's going to make your situation with your children better.
Exactly.
So when they're with you and they want to talk about the other parent, they don't have to think, oh, you know, I need to be careful how I frame this, because if I say something too positive about the other person, you know, the parent I'm with is going to be upset. They really have a sense that you're very fine and you're calm and you're happy and you're content. They can really feel, great, I could say anything. And it's interesting when you talk to children about how it feels when there's conflict between the parents. They often say, there's no one I can talk to. It's too risky. You know, I feel like I've got this unexploded bomb in my hand as I walk between the two of them, and I just don't know when it's going to go off because I'm a kid. What do I know? I accidentally talk about Dad's new girlfriend's cooking and Mum goes ballistic. You know, I didn't know. I'm just a kid. So I think that sense of my parent is in such a good place that I could talk about anything I need to talk about, something I need to process. I can do that with them. I think it's worth bearing in mind that children make sense of the world through interactions with more old brains than theirs. So their brain, in terms of being able to kind of make sense of the world, is not yet fully developed. So they need to link up with a brain that is fully developed. But that link needs to be with someone whose brain is actually working well. So if you say to a parent, I'm a bit upset about what happened at the other parent's house, and they go ballistic, and
They
the kid's
go
going
on.
to think, I wish I hadn't said it.
Yeah,
You
and they
know,
won't say it again.
they won't say it again. And so they keep on practicing that. And after a while, they don't say anything to anyone. So it's kind of a really great if the parents feels very accessible and they don't have an axe to grind, and they don't have a kind of an agenda that they instantly sort of jump onto every time an issue of the other parent comes up. It's lovely to know that they can process, think through, make sense of something. They say that this is the word used for this is name it and tame it. So a child will have an as yet unresolved issue. Maybe someone at school wasn't very nice to them or something like that, and they're a little bit kind of unsettled by it all and not quite sure. And they can go to the parent and just talk it through, and the parent's like very there and very attuned and very sensitive to this. And eventually a word will come up that kind of captures the nature of what the child has experienced. Maybe the parent might volunteer it as a hypothetical. Maybe you feel like this, or maybe the child might come up with it. But once they've kind of thought it through, and then they go, okay, I feel okay now because I've kind of made sense of it. I've processed it. I've named it, and I've tamed that sense of unease that I had, and my parent helped me. So again, it's hard to be a parent who's been through a tough time and be that person. But, the stakes are high, because if the child is able to enjoy that, then when they get to be adults, they think, well, they don't have a sense of anxiety or doom about what I'm about to go through. They have a sense of, well, I'll just talk it through, or I'll think it through.
Let's use that example quite like that of, the kid coming home and saying something about what happened at the other parent's house that may have been really good or may have been not so great. What would you say instead of that like initial reaction that you were saying, let's maybe not have that initial, going ballistic or whatever reaction? What would you say to them instead that is a good reaction to have or the right thing to do in that situation with their child?
So the child's voiced something they're not happy about,
Yeah.
and it's happened in the other parent's house.
How do we do that with a message of goodwill almost to the other parent? Because you're wanting to keep that positive relationship, but also there's a situation here that you aren't happy with, or you have a kind of gut feeling that you're like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm not happy about that, but
Yeah.
I don't want to go off because
What
that's
do you
not
do
the
in the
right thing to
moment?
do. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
So the second that you hear it,
Yeah.
you kind of feel your blood starting to
Yeah.
rise. Yeah.
And the kid's gonna then maybe they're gonna see that, maybe they're not. But what would you say to a parent at that point where they're like, I'm not
I
happy
think
about
probably
this?
authenticity is probably the most important thing, to kind of a guiding principle, if you like. I think, you could almost say, that's something that I kind of have to watch out for, that I don't get sort of overly upset by that myself.
Okay.
So you're kind of allowing the child to enjoy a sense that you have processes that you have to kind of put in place for yourself. Like, I need to watch out for a topic like that because I could find myself reacting quite quickly.
So like a self-maintenance almost. Like you're showing your child that it's good to have that self-maintenance. Even when I'm angry, I feel upset, I'm actually going to deal with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And then I think,
self-awareness.
and this is a common phenomenon where something's happened in the other household, and the kids come back and sort of alluded to it, and the parents instantly thinking, that doesn't sound good. What's going on in that household? If you go back to the thing I was saying before about being able to check in with the other parent and knowing that it'll go well, is a great option, because a lot of people just wonder. They can't check out with the other parent because things are too difficult. They can't say what happened. But if you've established that sense of support and appreciation and goodwill, and you contact them and you begin the process that they have said they'd really like. So just when you contact me about something difficult, could you please just say, first of all, I just want to say how much I appreciate how hard you try when the child's with you. And I understand that, it's difficult for you because you've got a new partner. So I just want you to know that I appreciate and understand how life is for you. Just give me that before you start. and I'll be okay. So again, you follow those very clear guidelines. You say those things that the person said matters to them. Then you can dig into the topic.
So it's good to have that kind of setup before you move into this kind of post-separation.
Yeah, you need
It's
to
good
know
to
it in
have
advance.
a good advanced setup of, and also the tone of that you've been to get, you've been separating and you've done these goodwill messages, and you've set the kind of guidelines of this base is good now, we're good, and these things might come up, but actually when they do, we have things in place of
Pro
when,
forma.
yeah,
Absolutely. And we follow it to the letter because, who knows, someone might not be in a good mood that day. So it's not necessarily easy to kind of remember how to be. So if you have the very clear guidelines from the other person and you follow them, they'll like it because they were the one who said, this is what works for me. So it's not as if we're all just putting a fake smile on and saying, come on, let's be nice. You're actually working on the fact that humans are very relational creatures. And if they hear a particular message that they value and that resonates with them as making them feel safe and appreciated, it will always work. You can do the same thing every time and it'll always work because that's that particular, it's kind of like a language of love in a way. It's like, I really love it. People say to me before we launch into a difficult subject, I just want to acknowledge how hard you've worked. I just want to say how much I appreciate how kind you've been, how patient, whatever it is, what a great
softens
mum
the
you
blow.
are. Just give me that.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't need hours of it.
Yeah.
Just give me that.
Yeah.
And
And it
then I'll
really
be
connects
fine.
with them
Yeah.
because they've said that they
They've
want
said
that.
it. Yeah. You're not generically hunting around what sort of thing could I say. They've very specifically said, do these things, smile, have a body language like this, like look calm, look relaxed, and say these words, and it will work with me every time.
How do parents figure this out? Because that's quite detailed about what we need after we've separated. How do you figure that out with a partner?
I think, so what we do in our work is we very specifically go through the process of saying, if you were really loving where the other person was coming from, regardless of the situation, what would they be doing or saying? What would be emanating out of them that made you think, this is going to be okay? So you really encourage people to get very articulate. And in a way, you can kind of sound like you're being really dumb on occasions because you'll say, tell me about why a smile works, So, but the relationship in the past hadn't made sure that people knew a smile was required. And they didn't know each other well enough because they've been together for years. They think they know each other inside out. But actually they don't. They don't really know each other at all well. In fact, their best friends know them better than their partners do very often. So getting people to very specifically articulate what it is about a smile that works, when the person who's kind of offering the smile understands the nature of why a smile is important and what else comes with it and what the implications are. Like, what message do you get when you get a smile? What does it say? Well, I'm anticipating that other person's going to be appreciative of me. I think the calmness that they exude makes me feel very safe and everything feels very predictable and reliable. So there's like tons of information that comes with the smile or whatever it is they want. And it's important to know what is it, that thing, and why does it matter? So you sew this into the fabric of your parenting alliance. Yeah. And it's just there and you just do it all the time. And you find that every interaction you have goes perfectly well.
Fascinating to think that like a small thing like a smile would make such a drastic impact on, because it sounds like that just couldn't even be the case.
Yeah, surely it can't be that simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about what the smile represents, I suppose. There's something about certainty, having that knowledge of certainty. There's something about that just makes me feel really calm. Or there's something about calmness that I really desperately need when I'm interacting with people in general. There's something, calmness matters to me, or certainty matters to me, or space matters to me, or affection. We've all got different kind of languages. And when someone says, well, they'd smile, and then you kind of say, but why is a smile so important? What is it about the smile? What feeling do you get when someone smiles at you, or when, your ex smiles? It gives me a sense of calmness, or I feel as though they're on the same page as me. So it's more about what, certain words or a smile or relaxed shoulders or not slamming a car door, even things, that is a cue that we're going to take and just think, oh, well, they're obviously in a bad mood.
This
or
is going to go badly.
this is going to go badly.
Yeah, I suppose everybody has those kind of things about a partner or a person that they know really well, that they're the thing that they know that, oh, that's one of their, that, they're off on one again. They're going to go off, or, oh, that makes me feel really good. Everyone has those things that make them feel really good personally. It might not be a smile. It might be to ask them how they are.
Exactly.
Or
something. And
like
then,
eye contact.
so you think when you're kind of meeting someone, you're instantly picking up tons of information about how you should be. So if you walked into a new environment that you hadn't been in before, like as soon as you got a new job and you walked into an office and everybody kind of looked up and very warmly kind of smiled at you and welcomed you, you changed tack instantly.
Yeah.
If you walked in and everyone just kind of ignored you and running around looking busy and sort of grumpy, and you'd change, you'd manage that accordingly. So we very quick to work out what information's coming to me and what should I do with it? How should I respond?
Yeah, it's fascinating that we almost forget that in a relationship.
Yeah,
that
we know it in
one
other
of our
environments.
most important personal relationships.
Yeah.
We kind of forget that actually these things matter. You wouldn't go into work every day and slam the door and say, not today, I'm not talking about this or whatever, every time that you see someone, because you know that you're going to get a bad response from them at work. You're going to be, that your boss or the person that you work with is going to be like, I don't want to work with them.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't like that.
I don't know why we forget that in intimate relationships. But I suppose it goes back to family, like those personal meanings that we made of interactions when we were very young. We're making them in an intimate relationship, in a work environment. We're making slightly different meaning of it.
Yeah.
So we kind of expect the other person to kind of always behave impeccably in a way, and we're very annoyed when they don't.
Yes.
So we have, ridiculously high levels of interpretation that go on in intimate relationships.
So that post-separation alliance, that parenting alliance, kind of needs to be set from the outset and really have the rules of, the outset of the separation, really have the rules of what are we going to do now? How are we going to create a good tone between each other? How are we going to create good feeling? And what are our messages of goodwill going to be during difficult situations?
Yeah. And if you've been through a process where you've just heard from your children how they feel about how you are with each other, how you get on with each other, you'll be lifted into a state of mind where you're concerned about the children's welfare and you want them to be okay. So when you're talking about how you're going to manage your relationship in the future, there's a lot of motivation. There's a lot of a strong desire to kind of get this right. You understand now the correlation between the quality of your relationship with each other of parents and the welfare of your children.
Yeah.
So when you're then talking about how we're going to relate to each other in the future, you've got this strong sense of, I really want to do this. I really want to do it well. I really want to put in time and effort into talking about what I personally would like, because I really see the value of that. And I know my children will thrive. If we get this right, our kids will be okay.
Yeah.
So there's really strong input and sense of desire to kind of do it well once you've heard from the children, which is why we think it's so important that the children have a voice.
Yeah.
Because it motivates the parents to kind of step up.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Well, thank you so much. That was fantastic. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you found it interesting and learned something new that maybe you can try in your own relationships. If this episode resonated with you, subscribe to Conflict to Connection and share it with someone who might benefit. You can also find resources on our website at civilizedseparations.co.uk. Next time, we'll be discussing the ins and outs of blended families. So subscribe now and follow along to find out more. Thanks for listening.